There are hundreds of cities that have given control to the Antichrist all over the world, and many are in the United States. My guest, Craig Bong, is going to give you inside information about what's really going on and how this is being handed over to the Antichrist. Okay, Craig, talk about the 15-minute cities, the C40 cities. What is all of that?
The 15-minute cities, there's a question they ask, is this our future? And they want to change the trajectory of where we're going since 2020, since we had the pandemic. And so we've had a whole lot of more discussion since 2020 concerning these 15-minute cities in order to keep people in a centralized area. So C40 is the consortium of municipalities that have signed on to this 15-minute city plan. And there's 96 cities to date that have signed on, and mayors have signed on to this to date, as well as the island nations of the Commonwealth and other island locations have signed on to this as well.
Okay, but they say that the 15-minute cities are just making it convenient for your life, and so what's wrong with these cities?
What's wrong? Their goals is what's wrong. And number one goal is to reduce caloric consumption per day by force, essentially within the next few years, between 2030 and 2040.
Okay, wait, what does that mean? Is it different for? They're going to tell us how much we're supposed to be eating?
No more meat, no more dairy. They'll tell you how much you'll be eating and what you can eat, and we find that in, I believe it's 1 Timothy chapter 4. In the latter times, they'll forbid marrying, which is what we saw in the pandemic, and eating of certain foods such as meats. So that's in the Bible. That is a prophecy of the latter times.
Now, I mean, are they going to say, okay, women are allowed 1,200 calories, men are allowed 1,600 calories, or it's just they're forbidding certain food?
They're forbidding certain foods to lower your caloric consumption.
Okay, and
to save the planet. That's the idea behind it. It not only limits your food intake and how far you can go, but also how many times you can fly per year. You're limited one flight every 3 years. You're only limited to travel a certain amount of miles per year. The state of Washington has also tried this in the past, that you had to write down all your mileage, and then they would tax you on any mileage thereafter. But it failed to date, so that'll probably be pushed through later on.
It's interesting. Everything is always with taxes and penalties.
Yes, more taxes and penalties. And then it not only merely shifts private car ownership from fossil fuel cars to electric, but then that's a grid that is impossible to fulfill, because you can't have enough wind power and enough solar power to charge all these cars. So, but that's their plan, and to eliminate 90% of car ownership by 2030 to 2040.
Okay, now since you're talking about the 2030 agenda, explain what happened at the UN, the July 2023 meeting in the UN regarding the 2030 agenda and these cities.
The July meeting was convened under the theme of accelerating the recovery of the pandemic and the full implementation of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development at all levels. Goal number 11 is the sustainable cities and communities. So this is the goal they're pushing, part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030, and it's inclusive of the Paris Agreement agreed upon in 2015 and signed in 2016. And this is what it says: speakers call for an ambitious action, investments to build sustainable, inclusive, resilient cities, urban communities as high-level political forum continues. As cities grow exponentially, governments in the private sector and civil society will have to urgently work together to ensure that urban communities of the not-so-far future are sustainable, resilient, and inclusive for all, speakers stressed during the meeting. So that's their agenda, and we have the tools. They say we have the tools at our disposal. However, political will and action must be paramount. So they're trying to get this as a voluntary type of thing at first, and then eventually, with the next pandemic, they'll enforce it.
Right, which we really believe that since we have an election year of 2024, that's when they'll start pushing this again.
Yes, in fact, I just got a notice on my email from the frontline doctors that it's coming. So get ready.
Oh my goodness, so they already know what's going on behind the scenes.
Blank 2.0, that's what's coming.
Right, right. I mean, we know this is what they did. They did this 4 years ago. They do the same thing. I mean, they're very, very predictable. It's kind of sad to me that some people can't see this. But, what's interesting to me, and I sent you this video, Craig, of President Clinton, and I want you all to watch this. But basically, the C40 cities, which is kind of like the prelude, that was like with mayors and leaders all over the world coming together to have control of the cities because of climate. And then the C40 cities are really, it's all related to the 15-minute cities. They're really the same thing. But I found it interesting. Clinton, this is like 8 years ago, he was congratulating the C40 cities for their 10-year anniversary, which means it started in the 2000s. They've had this agenda going on forever. So I want you to watch this clip he makes it sound like it's really good, and it's interesting because he was one of the ones who was behind it. Okay, watch.
As someone who helped to start the C40, I'm very proud to be part of a growing movement that champions the critical role cities play in tackling climate change on a global scale. So it's wonderful to extend heartfelt congratulations to the organization and the 70 cities and 500 million people it represents on reaching this important 10-year milestone. It has truly been a decade of action and results for the cities. With help from the C40, today's cities are sharing ideas and working together to drive climate action, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and become serious contributors to the international climate conversation. Not a moment too soon. C40 cities continue to lead the way on a range of sustainability issues, from transportation and solid waste management to green growth. By doing things like implementing bus rapid transit systems, increasing energy efficiency in buildings, enhancing resiliency to severe weather events, closing landfills, and many others, mayors are not just fighting climate change, they're also making their cities cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable places for people to live and work. In just 10 years, C40 has become the world's preeminent network of communities working to address climate change, connecting cities all across the world to help build on each other's successes. And increasingly, national governments are also looking to their cities for tangible solutions and measurable results. Looking ahead, I have no doubt that cities will continue to play a pivotal role as we all work together to secure a safe, healthy, and economically bright future, both for ourselves and for generations to come. Congratulations, and keep up the great work.
So, Craig, what do you think of President Clinton just making it seem like it's a great thing?
Well, he's doing what all governments are pushing. So all the governments are pushing the same agenda. So you have China pushing the same agenda. I mean, China's like the extreme worst of all these. So in China, there's every 1.5 people, there's one camera monitoring their every move, and 100% by facial recognition and by gait. So they can picture the whole body, and they know who it is. And then they're tracking you by your phone too. So the Christians in China will take their phone apart, take the chip out, and then place that chip somewhere, and then go to their meeting, so they're not being watched by the Chinese.
Wow. Now, do they have you will talk about being surveilled. I mean, we're now hearing about the smart cities, which you said the smart cities, and I hate they call it smart, that we're now seeing all these cities in the United States that are coming on board with the smart cities, which is related to the C40 and the 15-minute cities. I mean, they're saying they'll all be implemented by 2024. Look at that list, everyone. I'm showing you the list. And the thing is, those cities are really, they say, well, we're using this to, it's really surveillance, like what you're talking about in China. But they're saying, oh, we're just like monitoring things to make sure that we have enough resources and things. But no, it's totally control. Any comment about that?
It's to limit their ability to do absolutely nothing without government interference. I mean, I can travel 15 minutes from my house. I have to go through probably five, at least 5 cameras. So I know where they are. So if I want to avoid the cameras, I know how to do it.
It makes me think maybe I should just buy like 5 different wigs. I'll be gray tomorrow. I'll be a redhead the next day, and get masks on.
Right now, it's just used for traffic control and to solve crimes. But later on, it'll move to the next level. So, in Seattle, for example, they're taking pictures of all your license plates on the vehicles, and then then they know who to send the bill to for traveling on that road. So it's the toll idea behind it. Same with Kansas and a lot of other states are probably doing the same thing.
Now, the 15-minute cities, what have you been seeing as far as all over the United States? How are you seeing it being implemented?
Well, Seattle is one example. They have a map of how they're going to implement the 15-minute city plan. And so you have all your necessities within 5 minutes to 15 minutes of your house.
Okay.
So there's a map in place for this already for the city of Seattle. Seattle is one of 14 cities in the U.S. They're following the C40 plan.
Right, and this does not even include what the smart cities, which we know are going to eventually turn into the 15-minute cities, which
cities
is a huge list.
Place. So we can go to just about any large city, and they're trying to convert it to a smart city.
Right. Now, and the thing that I didn't realize until I started talking to you, and I mentioned it on another video, was that when you start seeing like large sidewalks, at first I thought, oh, this is so great, this is so fun. But they're making these large sidewalks, so that's one of the signs of the 15-minute city. So now you can only be traveling by bicycle. So there's different signs to see. Now, when you say 5 to 15 minutes away, is that driving, or does that mean by bicycle, or does that mean by walking?
Bicycle and walking. So you're not going to get very far.
Yeah, even by bicycle, let's say.
Because they want to cut car ownership by 90% by 2030.
Right. And of course, the other the other things would be like doctors. You would be limited to what doctors you can go to because everything has to be close by. Could you explain them what's going on in Oxfordshire, England, with their 15-minute city? Have they implemented it yet, or is it going to be in 2024?
They're implementing it now, but there's some pushback because we got some Christians that don't like it. So that's good for the Christians.
Yay.
So Oxfordshire is that they're gripped by their anti-car ideology, and their focus is less on helping people get around than reducing our use of cars by any means necessary. So they want to focus on like we just were talking about, focus on getting people walking from one distance to another or riding their bicycle to somewhere. Oxfordshire is divided into 6 different regions or 15-minute districts. And in these districts, most household essentials will be accessible within a 15-minute of an hour walk or bike ride. So there it is right in their document. So the residents will have no need of a car.
Now, when you had mentioned that to me before, I was starting to look into that, and I saw that they were going to issue 25-day passes per year and per car. So it's like, and if you go beyond that limit, then you have to start paying taxes and penalties for that.
You have to pay a fine, and they tried to do that, but it was shot down. So that right now that's in limbo.
But they're pushing for 2024 for that
yes,
city.
They're pushing for 2024. It has to be implemented by 2025. So they have a 2-year window to do this.
Now, how is King Charles related, like with the Terra Carta? How is this related to these cities?
So the C40 Cities supports the Terra Carta mandate, and so
Can you explain what that is? Because some people have not.
so Terra Carta. That's
This is your 15-minute warning, and if you go beyond this point, you will have a penalty. This is the type of notification you can expect to get on your phone when you go beyond the 15-minute city, and they don't want you to hear the information beyond this point that most have no idea about.
So there's a letter, November 10th of 2022, the C40 Network support for the Terra Carta. The C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group announces its support for the Terra Carta, and that's support for King Charles, by the way. I'll just label it as it really is. And its underlying principles for a transition to a sustainable future that places at its center nature, people, and planet. That's King Charles' Terra Carta. The center is nature, people, and planet, of which he is king over. He has a symbol that shows himself as king over all the world, nature, people, and planet. The Terra Carta, established by King Charles III in 2021 as Prince of Wales, presents a bold vision for transformation of the private sector, one that recognizes the urgency of the climate, biodiversity, and health crises, because it's going to be plural here pretty soon, and seeks to accelerate and integrate sustainability into every aspect of decision making. So it's control. And at the end, between now, when we're making this video, and the end of the year, King Charles will issue 5 principles on land use and 5 principles on water use that's designated in part for the C40 cities to follow. So they're following King Charles' initiative on the Terra Carta. And the Terra Carta is 10 principles to live by, or 10 mandates to live by between now and 2030. The C40 calls on the Terra Carta signatories to work with cities to accelerate delivery of their commitments for the sustainable market transformation. In particular, they encourage signatories to set and embed ambitious targets to have carbon emissions by 2030. So it's 50% carbon emissions. So that means if you have 2 cars, you only can have 1 car. Improve transparency and disclose of reporting of climate action, so you can have to report everything. That's with your businesses and your public sector as well. Align industry partnerships, investments, and finance flows with a net zero transition. Net zero is you and I are dead, so that's their goal. So they want to. So ultimately, it's to lower the population.
Right, and I found it interesting. I was like looking at some of the funders for those C40 cities. It was IKEA, and there's going to be more than I'm naming.
Google's a big one.
L'Oreal. Oh, Google figures, and then of course George Soros, Open Society Foundations, American Express, FedEx. Those are just some of them that are funding the C40 cities.
Basically, their idea is do not leave your allocated zone. So you have a certain zone you have to be in. And then a lot of these zones are going to have one entry. So Sharjah is an example, United Arab Emirates, and you have one entry point. And then so if you live in one neighborhood over here, and you have to travel, you have one entry point, you have to travel all the way around and go through an opposite entry point. So you have actually more travel to get to grandma's house. So it makes absolutely no sense.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and then their excuse to say, "Uh-oh, you used too many miles. Let's tax you again."
So Sharjah United Arab Emirates is now, they have their sustainable cities planned already, their neighborhoods planned already, and with 20% down, you can get in and be in that kind of neighborhood as of today. It's being advertised today.
Yeah, I want to show a video of how they sell the C40 cities. They make it seem like, oh my gosh, life is going to be so convenient. Everything is at your fingertips. I just want you to watch this video just to see how they're selling it.
Before the recent lockdowns around the world, we led hectic lives with long commutes and not enough time to spend with our families and friends. Traffic polluted our air and smog blanketed our skylines.
What if it could be different? What if we could create a new normal where we reclaim our time, our health and well-being, and our communities?
This is the idea behind the 15-minute city, a growing movement to make our lives in cities more convenient, less stressful, and more sustainable. A 15-minute city is one where everything we need is close to home, where communities are safe and inclusive, where the air is clean.
A 15-minute city is one where it's easy to get goods and services. Fresh groceries, healthcare, and other amenities are all just a short trip away. A 15-minute city is one where everyone has a place.
A 15-minute city has affordable, accessible, and adaptable housing for households of all sizes and ages.
A 15-minute city means that you can work close to home or work remotely more often.
And we all play a role in our neighborhood.
What if we don't go back to life as it was? What if we already have the power to change how we live? Together, we can reimagine and create the future we want. One that is cleaner, safer, healthier, and more inclusive, and gives us back valuable time to enjoy the little things.
So you can see they are trying to totally sell you on the idea. Craig, what more information do you have regarding the cities?
So these C40 mayors are saying that this is definitely going to happen. This is ultimately their goal, and it will happen. So, but right now it's voluntary. I want to make that very important note. And then not all of it's bad. So some of it's attractive to a lot of people. The live in a little house, that's attractive. That's part of the sustainable city plan, is to live in your tiny house. Actually, I own a tiny house, so I kind of I'm not in one, but I actually own one. But that's ultimately their plan, is to live in a tiny house in a tiny neighborhood and don't have to go very far and eat and lower your food intake and how much time and how much exercise you get. So that's what ultimately is their plan.
Right, and they can control us better because they can control each little section better.
So the environment is central to everything you do. That it's all central about saving the planet. That's their number one thing. And so if you do a little research, and I encourage anybody just to research it. Just type in 15-minute cities, listen to the videos they have, and you'll see and listen to both sides. But you see where it's all coming from and where it's headed. And this came from a mix of the the UK Labour Party, the American plutocracy, the United Nations, and the French academia. That's where all this originated from. It was born with C40, chaired by London Mayor Sadiq Khan, and calls itself the network of mayors for nearly 100 world-leading cities collaborating to deliver the urgent action needed right now, immediately, to confront the climate crisis. So they're saying this is a climate emergency, and we must do it right now. Central to the birth of the project was another former London mayor, Ken Livingstone, which he explicitly said, "I hate cars. If I ever get the powers again, I'd ban the lot." So he hates cars altogether. So I hope he doesn't have one, because he'd be quite the hypocrite. As mayor in 2005, Livingstone staged the first C20 climate change summit. Within a year, his initiative was backed by former President Bill Clinton's charitable foundation. In 2007, billionaire New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg hosted the second summit. By this point, the group had been renamed to the C40, as it featured 36 mayors from major global cities. Now today it's 96 cities, and expanding very fast to islands such as Hawaii is a big supporter of the smart city grid. So is Barbados. So you could just Google that and find more information. The C40 mayors would later be invited to the United Nations at COP21. This is when the Paris Agreement started taking shape in 2015. That's when they first presented the idea of the 15-minute city, was in 2015.
Ah, interesting. And that was when Clinton gave that speech of that video that I had before earlier in the show,
Yes.
congratulating the C40 cities.
There's little pro-human about the whole concept. It's all about nature and the environment. And the fact that it took the pandemic lockdowns to really give the idea a boost is telling us a whole lot about this regard. So it's preparing for the next round, which is 2.0. So that's what's coming. A big moment for the 15-minute city came in 2020 when the Socialist Party candidate for Paris won re-election. Much of her campaign was based around the 15-minute city concept. She pitched to turn the French capital into the city of proximity, where little children walk to school and residents know their local baker. And this struck a chord at the time with the lockdowns, and people were suddenly spending more time inside their homes. So you can go to online, and still to this day, people say, stay home, save lives. And it's the same concept with this 15-minute city. You'll save lives if you stay home within 15 minutes. We've also partnership. The C40 has announced partnership with the United Nations Habitat. So that's another key portion of this. The advocates like to present the cities as people-centered, but this only comes from the high level politicians, rather than the common people like you and I.
Now, have you seen this in 2019? The mayor of LA, he started a C40 Global Youth Initiative, and it reminds me of another leader in the 1940s. And it's like recruiting children, the youth, and teaching them how to live a sustainable life, and of course, having them be the eyes and kind of be the police for those who were not doing it. But had you heard about that initiative?
Yes, and I've been in public schools too, so I remember in the third grade, this would have been around 1980 or so. Around 1980, they're pushing the climate agenda in the 1980. So that's well before any of this Agenda 21 came into play.
Right, so this has been going on for a while.
We didn't change. It's probably been going around since Apostle Paul. we don't. It's a joke, but it probably has. It's a spirit of the Antichrist.
Right, absolutely. Now, something that I had no idea about, I really never knew what Build Back Better was. And King Charles originated that with the Great Reset. And then when Klaus Schwab, he ended up saying Build Back Better. But I didn't realize until I looked on the C40 website, they were explaining what Build Back Better really, really meant. And it meant having the 15-minute cities. I was shocked. I'm like, Build Back Better. I mean, we knew that it was something not good when people thought, oh, Biden originated that, which is so not true. You saw leaders all over the world talking about it. They were talking about you living in a 15-minute city where you could hardly go anywhere. That's Build Back Better.
And in 2016, they said, the World Economic Forum said, you will own nothing and be happy. It's the same concept of the sustainable cities. So stay home, save lives. Can't leave your house within 5 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, another more propaganda thing that I've seen is that they're saying people in Portland, Paris, Melbourne, that people themselves are all really wanting this. And it's like, really? Who's really wanting this except those who have been hypnotized by thinking it's better for you just to sit in your house and knit?
There's actually a lot of people out there that don't want to leave their house since 2020.
Oh, right. So this is just going to feed into their fear and paranoia.
So we have in Saudi Arabia a city called Neom being built, launched under the Royal Highness of Saudi Arabia, of a vision of a future city that's 100 miles long, 500 meters above the sea level, in 34 square miles. And this is being built right now through the beginning of about the Gulf of Aqaba and extending a straight line for 100 miles. And this, you're supposed to live in this sustainable city and have all your amenities within 5 to 15 minutes of walking distance. It's supposed to be a city for a place for all people to come across to see as a wonder of the world. So it's mirrored on the outside. So if you're looking down at the city, you don't see it. The whole thing is mirrored. So very interesting concept that they're starting on right now. They're trying to fund in Saudi Arabia. I believe it's a $500 billion project.
Right, and I can't even imagine everything that for them to have these materials, how it is affecting the climate of what they're trying to say. We're doing all of this for the climate, but
so
I can't even imagine.
My question on this is, how long will it take for the city to burn down? 100 miles long, it's all enclosed, and you have a fire at one end, and the whole thing would be destroyed in 15 minutes.
Which maybe that's their intent. Very, very scary. And how do you see the Antichrist controlling these cities?
That'd be through his Terra Carta mandate. So there's 10 mandates or 10 principles to live by per year for the next 7 years, and that was in a press release on May 5th of 2023, the day before he was crowned king. And those initiatives are supposed to be brought forth here in the next few weeks. I don't know what time that's going to happen. I would say no matter what, it'll happen by COP28. That's the big event for the year. So by COP28, we'll know what those principles are.
Right, which is in December of 2023.
There's 14 major American cities part of this climate organization known as the C40. By the end of the year of 2030, there's supposed to be 0 grams of meat consumption, 0 kilograms, that is, 0 kilograms of dairy consumption, 3 new clothing articles per person per year, 0 private vehicles owned, and 1 short-haul return flight less than 1,500 kilometers every 3 years per person. So this is the control that they ultimately want to get to. Their goals can be found in the Future of Urban Consumption and a 1.5 degrees Celsius World Report. So that's a very, very interesting. I haven't read the report, but I would suggest anybody to go look that report up. It was published in 2019 and it was reemphasized this year in 2023. This organization is largely funded by Michael Bloomberg, and the American cities include the following: Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. And Phoenix is the first city in the U.S. to have a sustainable neighborhood that's in place today. So that's already taken place.
Now, are any of these people having to pay taxes yet if they go further than they should?
I haven't seen any information on that yet. So that's
right, not yet.
That's the idea, is to get you in there and then tighten it up later.
Right, and then once they have another pandemic, then they can now an excuse for why everyone needs to stay put.
Yeah, and that's their target, which is their desired goal. So it eliminates their certain products and their desire to keep you in that space, period. So you can't leave it. And you don't have a car, so you can't go anywhere unless it's public transportation.
Right. But all of this is signs that Jesus is coming back soon. All of this is signs of the tribulation. All of this are signs that the rapture will happen. So, all
this is signs that this year is likely the year it all starts, because it all comes down to COP28 and what they present at COP28. It starts September 5th of 2023 at the UN General Assembly, and where they're going to try to strengthen a lot of this with their SDG moment on the 17th and 18th of September. This year, in lockstep with the C40 Cities and 2030 aims, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced that the city will place caps on the amount of meat and dairy served by city institutions such as schools and prisons and the retirement homes. Meanwhile, in the UK, the UK has banned the sale of new gas-powered vehicles after 2030, and France has banned short-haul flights to cut carbon emissions. So we see this going full throttle ahead as of 2023.
Wow. Okay.
In 2020, the World Economic Forum promoted the C40 cities on their website, introduced by the Great Reset, which seeks to use the pandemic as a point to launch the global reset of society and supposedly combat climate change. We also see this on the Laudato Si platform. So the Laudato Si platform is pushing that we need to ride bicycles more and abandon our cars.
Okay, explain Laudato Si.
Laudato
Just
Si is
briefly.
seven sectors for 7 years to implement within the next 7 years, which started in 2022. So we're in that 7-year covenant of Laudato Si. It will be strengthened on October 4th of this year when Pope Francis does a speech to give it more strength. I don't know what that speech is going to entail. I just can't understand him anyways. So we'll see what happens by October 4th. But right now, being in September, we're in the season of creation. And October 4th is the St. Francis of Assisi Day. That's the day that he'll present his speech on Laudato Si.
Right, and this is all, again, about the climate.
This is banner movement for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So Pope Francis picks seven of the goals that the church must live by, and then those have to be implemented right now. That they're working on that right now. But it goes across all the religions. So you have not only the Catholic Church, you have the Methodist, the Baptist, you name it. That they're all taking part of this Laudato Si movement. And there's a list of churches one can find all those that support Laudato Si.
Right, and again, this is all connected with King Charles too. I mean, they're really in on it together. Yes,
and there's a document for that too. That I think it was presented back in 2019. There was a Russian document that presented Pope Francis as the banner for King Charles, moving the same agenda forward. But you have to take that document and then translate it to English, and it names dates and times and people, so it's all there. So these people are advocating for climate lockdowns. This is what this all is a climate lockdown, just in the same way we had the pandemic lockdowns of 2020. There's a few points to make. So the C40 cities, the mayors are committing to cut their emissions in half by 2030. It's their recovery plan from the pandemic. So this is ultimately their recovery, their Build Back Better plan from 2020. In order to create green new jobs of solar and wind power. So all these new neighborhoods will have to be, over time, will have to be run on solar and wind. And then it gives public spaces back to nature, whatever that means. But I would suggest that probably means they could take your house and say, oh, this place where you live now has to be turned back to nature. And so you have to abandon your house and live in a sustainable city. And then another important thing to pay attention to is the seal, the Terra Carta seal of King Charles, and that shows him as the crown over all the earth. And so he's the one in control of this whole thing. And actually, it's a 15-minute. Eventually, it'll turn into a 15-minute prison city. So you're locked in. You can only leave so many times per year. Oh, the marketing targets is that this will prevent future disease. So that's ultimately their plan is to prevent disease from spreading. So that's right in their agenda, and but ultimately it's a higher level of complete control.
Craig, thank you so much for explaining all of this. And you know what? There's nothing to fear, because even with all of their agendas, we kept on seeing the Lord doing amazing things even throughout the pandemic. So you got keep your eyes on the Lord, and you are his sheep. You hear his voice. You don't hear the voice of a stranger. He's still going to be doing amazing things in your life in the midst of all of this. But also look up, because Jesus is coming back soon, and that's an exciting thing. And please share this video, because we want people who have no idea to know what's really going on. And you also have unsaved friends, and they need to know what's going on too. And so their eyes could be open to accept Jesus into their heart. Thank you so much for watching. These 15-minute cities would not be possible without AI. And Craig Bong reveals AI and the Antichrist end time plan. Click this video to watch now.